Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can learn more at my website, illuminating-souls.com. But for now, the angels and I are here to keep you company as you come into a place of rest and sleep. Unless, of course, you're listening during the day and your intention is to stay awake as you run your errands or commute or go for your walk, then I'm here to just be good company. To be a loving, encouraging, sweet voice in the world for you. So this is a special episode because it is our 100th episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings. When I say our, I could say my, it's my 100th episode, but it doesn't feel accurate. It feels like this 100th episode belongs to all of us, all of you who've listened, to the angels, to the future listeners. It feels like there is a beautiful collective of light that has been seeding molecules of love for this podcast. And here we are at the 100th episode. I published the first episode on December 1st of 2021. So we're also coming up on the first anniversary. But the 100th episode is so cool. What an accomplishment. That means there's 100 hours of content out in the world. I think that is so beautiful. And so I'm just going to take a deep breath in and celebrate this moment with you. And for this episode, I'm guided to share with you the story of Illuminating Souls. Like, how did we get here? I've been in business now for 17 years. I launched the business in 2006. And there have been so many moments of grace that have enabled me to be here with you now. And so that is going to be our story time for this episode. But before we get there, let's bask in some of the angelic love together, because it is here. I barely feel like I'm in my body right now. There's so much love pouring through. So I invite you to take some nice deep breaths in as we call ourselves forward into the heart of God. The part of my mission here with this podcast is to help you come into the awareness that you are loved, that you are precious, that you are a blessing here on earth. So just take a deep breath in, and even if what I'm sharing may not feel true for you, just let me be right for a little while. Just breathe that in, that you are loved, that you are precious, and that you are a blessing here on earth. And the angels will help you receive this from this transmission, from this broadcast. And if you are getting ready for bed, I invite you to cozy on up and snuggle on in. It's my favorite time of day. I love, love, love my waking life, and I love going to bed at the end of the day. I'm a cozy person when it comes to sleeping. The more blankets, the better. The more pillows, the better. It's like it's a sanctuary. And it's that time where we drift off into the mystery of sleep. And our bodies and our consciousness get to replenish and reset. So just get comfortable in your body. Allow yourself to breathe in the love. And I'm going to invite the angels to be here with us now, even though they're already here. I just love the ritual of inviting them in. And just so you know, you can invite them in at any time as well. I do not have the angels on exclusive retainer. My hope is that this broadcast allows you to create more intimacy with the angels as well, so you can invite them in whenever you are guided to do so. So we'll take another deep breath in, just breathing in the love. And beautiful angels on high, we invite you to be here, and I am so deeply grateful for your invitation to each one of us to join you in this beautiful sanctuary. I am so grateful for the invitation to create this podcast, and for the courage and resources you have provided so that this podcast could be born, and so that it could ripple out into the world and find those it has come here to serve. I'm so deeply grateful for this moment of love. And angels, I ask that you bring blessings of light to each of the beloveds listening to this message. Help bring to them their own sparks of inspiration, bringing forward the vibration of well-being, of joy, of goodness, and of loving. And dear ones, just take another deep breath in, allowing the light to ripple to you now. Allowing this light to come to every cell of your body, every thought in your mind, and every emotion in your heart. This is beautiful, divine source energy. And it is filled with love for you. So just take some nice deep breaths in. And since I'm going to be sharing with you the story of Illuminating Souls, it's going to take a while. It's a long story. 17 years worth. I'm not going to give you every single moment, but there's a lot to share with you, filled with so much light. So I'm going to start our story early. I normally ramble here with you with the angels for the first 15 or 20 minutes of the episode, and then we go to story time, but we're going to start our story time early. So you get comfortable and take a deep breath and allow yourself to drift off into a beautiful state of sleep. And while you do, your angels will watch over you and I'm going to tell you this story. I've been contemplating how to share this journey, and it feels a bit daunting because there are so many moments, and so I've decided to just let this be organic. This is not going to be a chronological order of events. There's no way I could weave it all into one episode, but I'm just going to share with you the moments that light up for me as I celebrate this milestone of our 100th episode and 17 years of Illuminating Souls, and just allow whatever the story is meant to be just that. If you're looking for a companion to this episode, I invite you to listen to episode 50, which is the story of my awakening, that just happened to be published on my 60th birthday, which is pretty cool. And I share in that episode much of what transpired in the year 2000 that brought me to USM, because that's a huge cornerstone of how Illuminating Souls is born. And if you're new to the podcast, USM is the University of Santa Monica. And I went there to receive a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And then I went for an additional year to add to my degree an emphasis in consciousness, health, and healing. And it has been profoundly important in my awakening and my journey. And as I was contemplating where to start our story for Illuminating Souls, I began to return to the affirmation that I wrote the first weekend at USM, and this feels important to share. So, the first weekend of USM, they invite us into a process where we discern what quality we're going to be working with for the year. And then we write an affirmation in support of the quality. My quality was self-love, because at the time that was very elusive for me. I could love myself when others loved me, but when their love was no longer in the metaphoric room, I found it very difficult to love myself. So my first affirmation from USM that I wrote is this one. I am experiencing joyful and radiant self-love, and I am loving me. And I am trusting in my knowingness and in my magnificence. And I am enthusiastically listening to the magic in my soul as it leads me to more wide open spaces. So a couple of things about this affirmation in retrospect. I love that it started with, I am experiencing joyful and radiant self-love, because anything that was joyful and radiant, I was going to show up for. Those were words that deeply appealed to me. And then I said, and I am loving me, which is not the best grammar. I mean, it probably should have been, I am loving myself. But just this morning, as I was contemplating that, here's what came forward. If I had said, I am loving myself, that would have felt kind of formal. It would have felt like myself might be someone I don't intimately know yet, but me, I am loving me. Me was me. Me was my isness, my beingness, the intimacy of my all that I am. And so when I would say, and I am loving me, there was a profound intimacy in that exclamation. And then I am trusting in my knowingness. Like that's from the soul, my knowingness and my magnificence. And not in this way of, look how awesome I am, but my magnificence in that my divinity, my light. And I am enthusiastically listening to the magic in my soul. Like my whole life has been built around that ever since that moment. So I feel like that affirmation set the foundation for the rest of my life. It created this vibrational matrix that helped me on my way. And I remember when I first started saying that affirmation, it felt much more like a prayer than a truth. And now when I say it, I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, that's my life. I love myself. I'm joyfully and radiantly loving me. I love myself. Not in a narcissistic way, but I have such love and compassion for who I am and for myself, for my earth girl, for my practitioner self. So that's where we start our story of illuminating souls. Because before illuminating souls could be born, they first had to wake me up. And that's how I woke up. You can go back and listen to the story of my awakening. So now I'm awake. And I've gone through my 3 years at USM, and I'm also serving as a volunteer there. And I'm loving my USM experience. And then a number of things start happening. I decide I'm going to awaken to my mystical gifts, whatever that meant. Again, that's probably going to be a story for another day, but I will give you a capsule version, which is that I went to study with Doreen Virtue. I took 3 of her classes from 2004 to 2005. The first was her mediumship class, which again is going to be a story for another day. And then I took her angel therapy practitioner class, which again can be its own story. And then in the fall of 2005, I took her spiritual teacher's training, which I'll talk about more in just a few minutes. So while I was at USM, I really got to know many of the other students in the community. It became a family for me. And there were people that I knew who were life coaches, which sounded really cool. From my perception, they earned really good money. They could work for themselves. They got to encourage other people. And I was aware that I wanted to do something like that. I had a really good job. I was working in the corporate world. I was the vice president of a company. I was earning great money, great benefits. I loved my coworkers. But I would sit in these meetings and I would think, I'm using such a small amount of my magic here. I'm not even using the most interesting parts of me here, because during my time at USM, I had come to recognize that I had these gifts that flowed through me. That something happened to me when I was in the counselor chair, and this love would flow through me that would transform the moment. And I also have to say that I became aware that this gift did not only reside in me, it was also within my classmates too. So I don't want to make it sound like I was the only one in the room who was super special. It's one of the things that gave me confidence in the work that I do was I saw these gifts blossom open in my classmates as well, and in them, they were different. It's like instruments, we're all unique instruments, so I knew that these gifts were within me. And I couldn't imagine not somehow repurposing them in the world in a way that would bring me deep joy. Right? I am experiencing joyful and radiant self-love. Right? This is about my life experience, that I am loving my life and my mission and my journey. And as good as my job was, nothing about it lit me up other than it took care of my basic needs. My needs were met. My lower chakras were happy. I had a place to live. I had food. I had money. I had stability. But I wasn't inspired. And I would pray. There was a moment at some point in all of those years where I became really aware of this innate homesickness that I had for my home beyond this realm. That somehow out there, beyond the human incarnation, was this beautiful universe filled with love and expansiveness and wisdom. And I was somehow separate from it. And I would cry and I would release my grief. And one day the angels came to me and they said, part of the challenge for you is that you have it wired that you can't have a life here that feels like home. And that was absolutely true. That was my belief. And they said, here's what we would recommend. Start asking God. Say to God, God, help me create a life here that feels like home. I don't know what that would be. I don't know what that would look like, but I know that you know. So please help me create a life here that feels like home. And I really received that wisdom and that invitation. And I started asking. And my life began to change. And I don't have any grand, profound story of, and then the next day this happened, but it was an evolution. Help me create a life here that feels like home. What would that mean? How would that feel? And my consciousness began to shift towards a different destination. So for probably a good 18 months, I had been contemplating, what would it mean if I were to become a life coach? That was the container that I had access to at that time to call myself a life coach. And then I played around with an intuitive life coach because I thought that was much more me. I was very much aware of my intuitive gifts at that point. And so I contemplated that. And then Wes enters my life, which is a whole story for another day. But for the purposes of Illuminating Souls, we're just going to enter the part of the story where he's already in my life. And he is someone who shares this path with me. He is a healer. He is a wise one. He is my guide, right? He's so filled with insight and wisdom and love and support. And he gets who I am and he knows what I'm here to do. And he supports me 1,000,000,000%. So we start talking about what this would mean. What would I do? What would this look like? And at some point, I start playing around with names for my future company. I had a bunch of index cards and I just wrote down all the words I loved. Blessing, light. I knew I wanted soul in there somewhere because the word soul had been so important to me. I am enthusiastically listening to the magic in my soul. Soul was everything to me. And Wes had been studying shamanism, and in the school that he went to, they had something called the illumination process. And he must have been talking about it at some point, because there was just this click. And I knew that my business was supposed to be called Illuminating Souls. I never wavered from that. As soon as Illuminating Souls was delivered to me as the name of my business, I knew it was it. That was it. And Wes knew it too. We trademarked the name. It's like, well, I have to get to that part, so I'm jumping ahead. Somewhere around this time as well, my friend Julia was offering marketing, branding, living into your calling workshops. Her background was she had been in advertising and marketing for a long time, and she was a classmate of mine at USM, and she had this profound gift for distilling the messaging and the mission for companies and for people. And I'd been in a few of her groups and they'd been wonderful. And she'd offered this one day marketing workshop, I seem to remember. And she led us through all of these processes for our businesses. So I went in there knowing the name Illuminating Souls. And I kind of had a sense that I would be helping people and loving people and encouraging them. At some point, she had helped me, aka pushed me off a cliff, of acknowledging that my job title, what I would call myself, was going to be Channel for the Angelic Realms, which scared the wits out of me. I was really planning on calling myself something more comfortable, like Intuitive Life Guide. And at some point I said Channel for the Angelic Realms, and she said, that's it. That's what you're called. That's who you are. That's what you do. And I was like, I don't think I can call myself that. Total imposter syndrome, right? Like, oh my God. And she just pushed me off a cliff. She didn't care about my discomfort. She says, you're a channel for the angelic realms. So by the time her marketing workshop came around, I had accepted that as my job title. So in her workshop, she had us attuned to visioning statements for our businesses. And how it felt at the time was, it wasn't that I was visioning Illuminating Souls, but Illuminating Souls' vision was being downloaded to me. It's like, get out of the way and take dictation. This is what we're here to do. And it was a magnificent vision. It was about the angels. It was about channeling the wisdom and the love from the angelic realms. There were things that said, I am a teacher's teacher. I am not here to awaken the masses. I am here to awaken those that are here to awaken the masses. I mean, this is pretty heady stuff, and it was not coming from my ego. It felt like it was being shown to me. There were also things that, in hindsight, I see are so important. One of them is we're seen as the real deal. And that was really important to me. If I was going to be leaving a corporate job, I didn't want to just be seen as a neighborhood psychic. Like, this was going to have to be a company. I was a company now. I have an infrastructure. I have a website. I have a logo. I have a trademark. We're seen as the real deal. And many other things I could probably read to you, but I'm going to put that on hold for now. But so this blueprint for Illuminating Souls was delivered to me. And it was delicious. I would read through it and it felt like an invitation from my soul. Like, yes, this is what I'm here to do. This is who I am. This is my mission. But it didn't yet exist except in vibration. So I just kept steeping with it. And then I got my angel therapy practitioner training. And an important part of that training is that Doreen brings in a panel of other practitioners who are already doing this work. And they would tell us how they started their businesses and some of their best business practices. So at the time, much of Doreen's vision was all about making sure we had the tools to also step out and do this work professionally, which was so generous. So in 2005, the matrix started getting established where I started seeing a path forward for this to become a business. I still didn't quite know how. And then at some point, she offered the spiritual teachers training program, which was a remarkable class. It was a small group. I think there were 27 of us in the class. She taught it with her husband at the time, Stephen Farmer. And for 3 days, they basically outlined for us how to create a business as a spiritual teacher, which was filled with so much information I hadn't known. I had always worked for other companies. And they taught us how to make brochures. They taught us about starting a mailing list. They taught us about how to get speaking engagements. All of this very practical information about how to start this as a business. And I took copious notes. This was my blueprint. This was my way forward. I could do this. And somewhere in that timeline, in the summer probably of 2005, I had this daily practice of writing in my angel journal, which I share with you about in another episode, but I had this practice where each day I would write a love letter or a letter of guidance from the angels in a special journal. And it's not that I always knew that it was special. I sometimes just wrote in it as an act of consistency. I didn't necessarily feel the magic. But one day I got this download. And what's interesting is I cannot find this entry in my journal. I'm sure it's there somewhere. It's not like it didn't really happen, but I've looked for it since and I can't find it. But this was my memory of it. If you want to get where you're going, if you want to start your business, here's the plan. They told me to go ahead and give notice on my job, and it would be 6 months notice, which sounds crazy, but I had a very integral position in the organization, and I was really good friends with my boss, and I knew she would understand. And I don't know at the time that I knew it would be 6 months notice, but I knew for sure they would need at least 3 months notice. So that I would give them notice that I was going to be departing to start my own business. Because as long as I wasn't going to work with a competitor, I'm going to start a business where I'm going to be a spiritual teacher, they weren't going to hurry to get me out the door. They also showed me a vision of the logo that I would create for Illuminating Souls, which is still in existence. They encouraged me to hire my friend Phyllis as a coach. They told me the designer to hire for the logo. And they said, while you're still working in your corporate job, you're going to save all of your money for when you're no longer in that position and you're focused on illuminating souls. And you can also use your corporate salary to pay for your website and the trademark and the logo, because all of those things were big expenses. And so that's what I did. I first told Wes, and he was in agreement. He was supportive. And then I went and I told my friend Erin, who was my boss, I just got a download. And I'm going to be starting my own business, Illuminating Souls. And I need to give you my notice, but it's not like a 2 weeks notice. Like, I think I'm supposed to stay here to the end of the year, if that's okay with you. It was. So she and I agreed that I would stay through the end of the year, and that would give her plenty of time to reconfigure everything and decide what she wanted to do. So in essence, I gave her several months' notice. And then I began to move forward towards Illuminating Souls. I did hire the web designer and the logo designer and my friend Phyllis as my coach, and I was still working with Julia, and started to put everything in place. And I knew enough to only share this vision with a select few people. It was so tender within me because I was excited, I was exhilarated, and I was terrified. And I knew I could not share this vision with anyone who would feed my terror. And so I knew that my mom would be the last person I would tell. And it was going to be months before I would tell her because I had to be strong in myself before I gave her the information. So for several months, I was building the infrastructure for Illuminating Souls, envisioning the classes I would offer and getting everything ready. And I remember finally in November, I told my mom, and she said everything to me that I thought she would say, like, couldn't you just keep your job and do this on the side? You have such good benefits. You have a retirement plan. And I just laughed and I loved her. I said, I love you, Mom. I knew that that's what you would say, and I know you're worried about me, but this is my dream, and I will regret it if I do not take this chance. I can always get a job. That was my confidence in that moment. Was I didn't know that I could ever get a job that paid as much as what I was earning at that moment. But I knew in the job market as it existed back then, I would always be able to get work. I would always be able to pay my rent. And if for some reason I hit hard times, I could always go back and live with my mom, or I could always go and live with Wes. Like, something would happen, and I knew that I would regret not trying because the calling in me was so strong and so lovely. I needed to know if I could do this. And I had seen other people do this, so that was my blueprint. I had friends that were life coaches. I knew people in the angel therapy practitioner community that were doing this. So to me, it didn't seem so weird. It was normalized in some ways. So in January of 2006, I launched Illuminating Souls. And this is before social media existed. And it's so interesting as I look back at it that I hit it at just the right time. There are no mistakes. So when I launched Illuminating Souls, I thought I knew the classes that I would teach, and I had one, and I had a few people in it. And then in spiritual teachers training, I said it was in September. I'm now thinking spiritual teachers training must have been maybe in January of '06. It may have been right when I launched my business. And this is why I'm telling you this. This is why I think that's the case. Part of the spiritual teachers training class was that Doreen would give everyone a short reading. And in my reading, she said, I see writers' groups for you. And she said some other things, and I was so out of my body from the energy, it never occurred to me to ask her if I was supposed to take or participate in a writers' group or facilitate one. And I came back and I shared that with the three people that were in one of my classes, and they got so excited. They said, facilitate one. We want to be in your writers' group. Because at the time I was known for my writing and I loved writing. And I said, okay, that sounds good. And I started my spiritually based writers group, which was a cornerstone of my business for several years. And they were wonderful. And so I announced my spiritual based writers group to the USM alumni Yahoo group. And what was so cool about that was the timing, because at that moment in time, hardly anyone was offering classes or services within the alumni group. I mean, we were allowed to, but there just wasn't a lot of that happening. So I went to the Yahoo group and I shared with people about my spiritually based writers group, and that there would be angels and love and prayer and meditation, and people signed up. In those first years, we met in my living room in Los Angeles, and they were wonderful. And then I decided to do a virtual one over the phone. And those I announced to the angel therapy practitioner community. And again, at that point, there weren't a lot of people offering classes within the ATP community. And I had people sign up. And so those two groups met for several years, one virtually and one in person in my living room. And they were magical. They were wonderful. I still sort of long for those circles and those people because they were so beautiful. And that's a really significant part of how I launched Illuminating Souls, was in these spiritually based writers groups. We would meditate. We would share. They would read something that they had written. It was a magical time. And eventually they petered out. Everything has a life cycle, and at some point those came to completion. But by that point, I had started to build a following. So another significant development that happened was in March of '08, I started direct voice channeling Josephus and the Wisdom Council, which was so cool. And I had taken a channeling class, so this isn't going to sound as woo. I had tried to engage my gifts as a channel. I had taken a class. And my first experience, though, of channeling Josephus and the Wisdom Council happened in the group that had been meeting in my home, which by this point had been reconsecrated, the Mystical Ascension Group. Great name. I love that name. And so my first experience of channeling Josephus happened in that group that had been meeting in my home for several years. So at some point in '08, I had started to do angel circles with Josephus and the Wisdom Council, where people could ask questions and I would channel answers, and they were super cool. And my friend Janice from USM had come to one and she liked it. And at some point we were having a conversation and she said, you know what I was thinking? I wish you would do these angel circles on a regular basis. But I don't want to drive to Beverly Hills because I lived adjacent to Beverly Hills. She lived in Santa Monica, and anyone who's from LA knows that trying to drive from Beverly Hills to Santa Monica or vice versa during rush hour is not an easy task. And so she said, I would love it if you would do it on a regular basis. But I don't want to drive to your house. So maybe you could do them in Santa Monica. And I said, I'd love to. I just need to find a place to do them. And she said, well, I would host them. I said, okay. And Janice had this really darling apartment in Santa Monica and had a strange number of chairs. I just have to say this out loud. So Janice, if you're listening, I never asked why you had so many chairs, but she had these chairs that stacked on top of each other. And somehow we could fit 20 people for an angel circle in her apartment. I don't know how that worked. Really, in hindsight, it's a miracle. But she had a couch and she had a chaise and she had chairs and somehow we all fit. And these angel circles became a regular thing and they were magical and beautiful. And so I became known for doing these angel circles. So all of these things, the University of Santa Monica alumni community, the angel therapy practitioner community, the angel circles, all helped build my business. The other thing that was happening was there were various metaphysical shows that were taking place locally, both in Los Angeles and then in Northern California. So Wes and I started participating in the local metaphysical shows, and we met a lot of people that way. So our list had started to build, and we had started this beautiful family that is Illuminating Souls. And then social media happens. And none of us really know what social media is going to become. I've always just followed my knowingness of what sounds interesting. And when I got into social media, I didn't realize it was going to become what it is now. But once again, I hit it just right. In 2012, I found my way to these inspirational pages and they were getting a lot of traction, and these were not famous people. And I noticed the kind of posters they were creating, and I thought, well, I could do that. Let me try doing that. And I started networking with some other inspirational page owners and discovered that there was a whole community at the time of inspirational page owners who supported each other and shared each other's posters. And so in August of 2012, I had my first inspirational poster go viral. And then I was all in. And so for 3 to 4 years, I was a constant in Facebook land. And many of you now who are part of the Illuminating Souls family, you have found me through Facebook, which is amazing. And I've also met people through collaborations, and I feel like the whole time I've been in co-creation with Illuminating Souls, I get led. I seek out the sparks of inspiration. I let the inspiration find me. I think it's one of the reasons I've never had a business plan. I couldn't have planned this. I couldn't have planned my friend Janice inviting me to do regular angel circles at her home. I couldn't have planned all of a sudden deciding to do spiritual writers groups and those becoming my thing. I couldn't have planned channeling Josephus in the Wisdom Council and having such an amazing journey with them. I couldn't have planned this podcast. I've done variations of this before. I had a blog talk radio show for, I think, a year or so with a wonderful woman named Marie, and I would channel Josephus and the Wisdom Council for people. I did Musings of an Earth Girl for a while. But this podcast, this feels like a keeper. This feels like it still has a lot of life in it. And I love it. And I love the relationship that I get to have with you. So it's interesting because my journey with Illuminating Souls was really consecrated by so many things. It was the spiritual teacher's training program with Doreen Virtue, the work that I did with my friend Julia and my friend Phyllis, seeing all the others who were life coaches or intuitives out there doing this as their work. And I've crafted a rather unique approach to business because of this, and this is why I teach the business class that I do, which is connecting with the soul of your business. Because from day one, it was the soul of Illuminating Souls that has led me forward. I experience Illuminating Souls as a divine, wise entity. And I am on its board of directors, as are many divine beings. And we have a mission. And the mission is to bring more love to this planet and awaken people to the magic in their souls. This is what I'm here to do. So that beautiful affirmation of I am enthusiastically listening to the magic in my soul evolved into a huge component of my life's mission, which is to help others, including you, to awaken to the magic in your soul. Because, my friend, if I have magic in my soul, you have magic in your soul. So now it's 17 years later. And it was scary launching Illuminating Souls. In the beginning of the journey, I'd asked the angels, was there an easier way to get here? And they said, no, to get to where you're going, you have to walk through the forest of everything that scares you. And I was like, dang, that's harsh, but okay. I had to let go of my job. I had to be in the unknown. I had to be uncomfortable. I had to be afraid. I didn't have to be afraid, but I knew myself. I'm a Taurus. I need stability. It was frickin' scary and uncomfortable to not know where my money was coming from. It still gets a little freaky for me sometimes, even though I'm in a very different place. You know, when I send out an announcement for a class and I don't hear back from anyone for days, that still gives me a little inner earthquake of discomfort. So just so you know, I love it when I send out an announcement, and if you will decide in 5 minutes that you're in and sign up right away, that's awesome. So if you could do that for me, I'd be grateful. Thank you. I'm kidding. You take all the time you need to decide if you ever want to sign up for my classes. My process is mine to work. I own my own stuff. I promise. I will not put that on any of you. But it's interesting because I've often said this about the work that I do. I think some people who have their own businesses embody an entrepreneurial archetype. They're risk takers. They're comfortable with it. Even if they're uncomfortable, you understand what I mean, yes? But many of us who do this work, who are light workers with our own businesses, we have had to develop an entrepreneurial archetype because it is the only way we get to do this work. There are not Fortune 500 companies hiring angelic practitioners. So for me to get to do the work of my soul, I had to become an entrepreneur, a soul-inspired practitioner. And I've learned so much about this path over the years, and I am so grateful to the woman that I was in '05 who had the courage to say yes to that download from the angels. I'm so grateful to the me that I was in '06 who went through that first year of discomfort. And I'm so grateful for all the iterations of myself along the way, because I'm still here. I still got this. I love this work. It has never grown old for me. It has evolved as I have evolved. I've evolved with you. So many of you have been with me since the beginning. And this work isn't about me. I need to be really clear on this. You know, something the angels said to me in the beginning when I was first starting. They said, someone's healing, someone's spiritual journey has very little to do with you and everything to do with them. And they were saying that to me so that I wouldn't move into this place of over-responsibility or uber-importance, that I somehow had to rescue anybody. If you think about it, your spiritual journey and your healing journey started long before you met me. It has almost nothing to do with me, if anything at all. But what I do get to do is I get to bring to you molecules of love and comfort and inspiration and encouragement. It's like a little water can, right? I just water your garden a little bit with you. But you planted that garden a long time ago. The books you've read, right? The contemplation, the studying, your willingness to forgive, to heal, to look at life with new eyes, that's all yours. So when I think of illuminating souls, when I think of everything that has flowed through, it belongs to the divine. Do you know that Illuminating Souls has touched millions of lives over the years? It absolutely has with social media. And I have personally, directly worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of you. It's amazing. What a blessing. So Illuminating Souls, it is a vibration. It is an essence. It is an intention that we are here to help you awaken to the magic in your soul. We are here to bring more love. We are here to help evolve consciousness. We are here to keep you company on your path of light so that you know whenever you tune in to Illuminating Souls that we are here to bring you love. You can always expect love from this place. As long as I'm here, I will bring you love, and I will bring you encouragement, and I will help you remember who you are as a divine being in human form. This is my mission, and I am able to live my mission because of you. You are an answered prayer. back in '05 when I was allowing the blueprint of Illuminating Souls to download to me, you were a prayer in my heart that I would somehow find those that I have come here to serve. And here you are, this moment of you hearing this message, this is a miracle. This is an answered prayer. You are an answered prayer. That person that I was in '05, wishing and praying and hoping, somehow finding the courage to step upon this path. I prayed for you. I hoped for you that somehow the universe would bring us together and we would find each other and shine the love together. So here we are. So there's lots more I could tell you and fill in the blanks along the way, but that's the essence of the story of Illuminating Souls. I said yes to a download from God and the angels and our soul family. And somehow, miraculously, I have been provided along the way. And I'm still here. Amazing. And Illuminating Souls has evolved, but it is still the same. Almost everything that I wrote about Illuminating Souls back in '05 is still true today. Truly, that vibrational matrix has stayed in place all this time. You know, I'll share one other quick, interesting tidbit. Back in the beginning, the early days, I knew, I could see that I would be reaching tens of thousands of people. It wasn't egoic. It wasn't like, I'm so important, I'm going to reach all those people. I knew the angels showed me. And I had no idea how that would happen because back in '06, you'd have to become a Hay House author. You'd have to have a radio show. Social media didn't exist. I had no idea how that would happen. And then social media happened. And then in 2012, I learned about the inspiring posters and the Facebook Illuminating Souls page took off. And one day I realized, without even knowing it, that on a daily basis, I was reaching tens of thousands of people all the time. And I just think that's amazing, right? It's like these miracles exist, and we're not responsible for figuring out how to make them happen. Just one day at a time, one breath at a time, we live our way into God's dreams for us. That's the story of my life the last 17 years. The last 22 years for sure. Each day, a little bit at a time, I live into new dreams that God has placed upon my path. This podcast is one of them. There are more dreams calling to me. I don't know what they'll become. It's my job to decide if I'm going to say yes. I don't have to say yes to all of them. But that's the invitation, that the sparks of inspiration come in. And over the years, I have developed a comfort in being in the mystery of this process, that I trust in my knowingness and in my magnificence, and I enthusiastically listen to the magic in my soul as it leads me on this beautiful journey. And so I share this with you. And my prayer for you is that you hear the magic in your soul as well. And some breadcrumbs of inspiration and light find you. And together we walk this path of light and we shine love upon this planet as we remember who we are and we help others awaken to their light and their magic as well. So thank you so much for being with me on this 100th episode. I'm so profoundly grateful for you. I look forward to the episodes yet to come. I look forward to seeing where this takes us. And I'm so grateful for this answered prayer this moment. So I send you love and I wish you sweet dreams. And most of all, I say thank you. Thank you for meeting me here. Thank you for saying yes. And thank you for being you. I love you, and we'll talk again soon.